All right, so I got to play Resident Evil 9 or Resident Evil Requiem, whatever you want to call it, and I have a lot to say about it. I love Resident Evil. I talk about it all the time on this channel. If you're new, I'm Jake from Game Ranks, but over here I just talk about whatever I want. And yeah, Resident Evil Requiem is really cool, what I played, but I also have a lot of questions still. I can't help it as a Resident Evil fan. Like, I feel like I'm just always looking for some connection to something or some deeper mystery or lore somewhere. Ultimately, what I played was pretty simple, but I do want to talk about it. I have additional context because I actually got to see a work in progress version of this game at Summer Game Fest, but now I got to actually play a work in progress build with my own hands, with a controller. So some of this stuff might sound like a repeat from my Summer Game Fest video, but now I have additional context and I was into what I played, so I want to talk about it some more. So what I did play essentially is what the game reveal trailers kind of set up. I am playing as Grace Ashcroft, daughter of course, Alyssa Ashcroft. She wakes up, she's like chained to a hospital bed, upside down, you know, hooked up to an IV. Her blood is getting like taken or whatever. She breaks out of the shackles, and then you play as her creeping through dark hallways, trying to figure her way through this area, which is kind of like an inpatient, kind of like stay at hospital therapy type building. It's haunted and creepy, kind of giving a good mix of like a haunted mansion and a Resident Evil 2 police station in a lot of ways, like just some of the more inner hallways of that police station, you know, like the wood paneled walls and stuff like that. And what you do going through is you do Resident Evil stuff. You walk through slowly, you open a door, there's a jump scare because a body falls down, flops down right in front of you. You find a key, you have to figure out what the key opens, you have to get a tool to open something. You ultimately try to get to this door, and you have to power that door because it's like an electric gate door. And what do you need? Say it with me, Resident Evil fans. A fuse. That's right. So you go looking for a fuse, and you get and so in between all of that, it's peppered with some good scares and a pursuer. I talked about this in the previous video. Much has been said about this monster already. Essentially, it's kind of like picture Lisa from Resident Evil 1 Remake, this big creepy lady thing with chains, big gangly arms, but her head hits the ceiling, and she's got this big creepy moon-like, almost Yoko Taro face with bulging eyes and creepy teeth. And so this thing clearly can't see very well, but it is brutal. It will grab her and literally like chomp on Grace. So you definitely want to try to avoid it. And interestingly enough, the game does play a lot with light and dark. You can flip light switches on and off, and certain rooms almost kind of act as safe rooms because you'll quickly realize running away from this creature, hiding in a room with all the lights on, the creature will then kind of come through the doorway, kind of like Mr. T. Not Mr. T, but like Mr. X, like, you know, kind of coming through the doorway, the archway, but then the lights will affect it, and it'll burn and then run away and, you know, climb up a wall or something somewhere. And then you'll see kind of like the ceiling lights kind of shake and shimmer as this thing crawls around up in the attic or whatever, and you don't know where she's going to pop down next. Now, the use of light and dark thing is really cool because pretty early on you get a lighter, which is really cool because it just reminded me of Code Veronica X. In the beginning of that game, you get a lighter, and it's very useful. Here, it's something you flick on and off as a very faint light source. It's like just enough. It's really good for building atmosphere. You equip it with like a D-pad items, like in the previous new modern Resident Evil games. You just tap the D-pad left to right to switch objects and stuff. And for that matter, all the inventory stuff and inventory management very much to me reminded me of Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil Village as well. But again, the use of light and dark was good because especially, so I got to play through the whole thing twice, actually. I got to play through this whole sequence twice. So like I said, there's quite a bit. I tried to get up in the guts as much as I could. The light and dark with the light switches I really liked, specifically strong in first person mode. So you can switch between first and third person. I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but the first person mode, flicking on the light switch and, like, you know, you're in pitch black, but you see the glow of a little light switch, and you flick it on, and you don't know what you're going to see when the lights come on. That's like good, simple, effective horror. And the game, even just in this very small 20-minute sequence, feels like it was really taking advantage of that. I think that was really cool. Now, one thing that did kind of throw me for a loop is hiding from this monster who, again, like, I can't tell how smart it is. Like, I was able to bait it sometimes, but it was a little unpredictable. Like, sometimes I was like, I had to get down a hallway, but I could see this thing. I could see the silhouette of this monster, like, just standing in the hallway. So I had to kind of bait it out by taking an object like a bottle and throwing it for it to go after it. even still, it wasn't always perfect. And I think that's the game's intention, to kind of keep you on your toes. At one point, I found myself running to a spot with the lights on so I could get away from her. And at one point, I kept going back to the same room with lights on to play it safe. And it was kind of like the game saw my tricks and tried to, like, you know, keep me on my toes. So at one point I was running from her, and I get to the room with all the lights on, but the lights are off and the light switch isn't working. And I go in there and I literally panic. And the character actually panicked, and the voiceover too. And that was just good. In terms of first person horror, also what really worked here is a lot of nervous breathing, in a way that might annoy some players, but I think there was like enough variety to the nervous breathing, and the way it sounded was pretty organic. So it kind of helped add to the tension, especially with parts where you're walking down a very dark hallway and there's no music, there's no anything going on. There's just her steps and her nervous breathing. Now, the third person mode is interesting. Like, I just think from a technical standpoint, it's cool to have the game completely playable in both first and third. What I did notice is that it seems like the game, in terms of like how it would portray things when you weren't playing, like cutscenes or whatever, those would be first person or third person. And it kind of really didn't matter which mode you were in. It was kind of like, it just, the game did what it needed to do for that sequence. So what I'm saying is, if you're playing the whole game in first person, you're not getting every cutscene in first person, at least from what I could tell. Now, to switch between first and third person modes, you have to pause the game and go to a menu to manually switch it. It's not like you just click the right stick and it's on and off. I wonder if it's a technical thing, whether it's with the RE engine or something else, because I mean, perspective in first person is very different than in third person in terms of like environments and navigation and depth perception, but still being able to switch back and forth is good. And I actually almost think committing to one is nice to kind of keep the horror. I found it obviously scarier in first person because it's like the claustrophobia, not being able to see everything, right? But what was interesting about third person mode is that it didn't quite play like Resident Evil 2 or 3 or 4 remake, you know, like it wasn't that fluid, it wasn't that complicated, it was way more simple. So she could crouch, she could walk, she could sprint. She's also slow as hell. Also, when you're being chased and when you're being pursued, what I thought was kind of interesting, I don't know, this might annoy people, but I was like, oh, it's a horror game and you're playing as a regular old nobody, so it makes sense. When you're playing in third person and you're sprinting away from this monster, Grace will have kind of like stumbling and falling animations as she's like, like looking behind her, and you're controlling that. And I just thought that was kind of cool. Now, the big question I have is, like, this sequence was cool. I ultimately, you get through and it ends on a scare and that's it. And you get a message that's like, oh, the horrors are only just beginning, like some spooky Resident Evil thing. But my big question is, like, when do I do cool stuff? And I still feel like there is so much more to this game, just from the teaser trailer, right? Like, the teaser trailer showed like a ruined, abandoned raccoon city after the events of the original games. How much is that going to tie in? There have been so many rumors floating around about what this game is supposed to be, what it was at multiple versions, so I don't know what to think. But to me, this whole like Grace Ashcroft experience feels very small, very isolated, very self-contained, and I just wonder what the rest of the game is going to become. Because I like that they're leaning in on, like, you know, you're being a person that is scared and is untrained and is just a normal civilian. Great for horror, but also Resident Evil. Sometimes I want to do cool shit. I want to shoot a big old dumb gross monster with an acid grenade launcher, you know? So I'm just wondering, like, how the game is going to build to something like that. Is there going to be other characters involved? And of course, the big why is essentially why Grace and Alyssa Ashcroft, of all characters. I just didn't expect that, and I think them going for them could be cool, or it's them just going for a deep enough cut with a character that there's not as much baggage and they could do something with, but still stay in canon. I don't know. I'm still going to be that fan that's like, where's Chris? Where's Leon? Where's Jill? Where's Claire? Whatever. But if it can keep me interested, if it could do something cool, and if it can feel like if I am playing as Grace for this whole game, can I feel slowly empowered over time, and can I shoot a monster with a gun? That remains to be seen, but like, at least what I played now was a very cool horror experience. It kind of, honestly, maybe it's just like the structure of the hallways, the ways the hallway were lit. It did kind of feel loosely, it just reminded me of PT, playing that original demo, walking down those cursed hallways with the flickering light, with the light from the window. it had that same appeal. And I know like PT doesn't like have exclusivity to creepy dark hallways, but there's just something I couldn't quite put my finger on that it felt evocative of that. And I think that's cool from a horror standpoint. Look, I will always talk about how cool Umbrella Corp and Chris Wesker and all this shit is, right? But still, it seems like they're very much sticking with the Resident Evil 7 and 8 thing, which is horror first, Resident Evil lore second to a point. And I got to get over that. But at least what I played was really scary, visually really good looking. And I caught some moments naturally while playing, especially in third person, peering around the corner where I could see the monster. The lighting was perfect. And it really just made for some good imagery in real time while playing. So gorgeous, scary, cool. But I still want to see what the hell else is going on with this game. How linear is it going to be? How complex is it going to be in terms of like inventory, weapons, stuff like that? And also, what's different? What's going to be different? Other than playing in first and third and playing as a scared character, how else can they change up the Resident Evil formula? Because getting keys and getting fuses to unlock doors is cool, but we're this far along, I'm expecting them to try something else. So I'm excited to see what that is. But I think I've kind of rambled for a long ass time now, so yeah, that's ultimately where I'm at. Like I said, it's all the information I got. I still have so many questions. But yeah, this was actually playable for fans who went to Gamescom, the game convention in Germany, if you waited online to play this from like last week or so. I'd love to know what you thought if you got to play through it. If you've seen gameplay already out there, I'd love to know what you think of that. You know, what are you feeling on this? Are you an old Resident Evil fan? Are you a new Resident Evil fan since 7? I'd love to know what you're thinking. If you get what I'm trying to do here, just talk about stuff I like, just yapping, just stuff I find interesting. Clicking a like button legitimately helps me. Thank you, but that's it. I've kept enough of your time. I'm Jake Baldino. Subscribe because video games, pizza's on me. Resident Evil. Why don't they do that anymore? Anyway.